I put 10,000 kilometers on the Kove 450 this summer, and here's my experience. For those of you that are new here, I'm John from Mosko Moto. I'm an adventure rider based on Vancouver Island. I spend most of my time moto camping around the PNW with the goal of getting as far into the wilderness and backcountry as I can on my motorbike. That's exactly why the Kove 450 Rally caught my eye. Finally, a lightweight adventure bike that can hold a ton of fuel and pack luggage. It felt like the bike that finally had no limits. I could go anywhere on it. So I bought one. In this video, I'm going to talk about my ownership experience, the pros and cons of the bike, the mods I made to it, the problems I had with it, my warranty experience with Kove, and wrap it up with a conclusion of if I would buy it again. Just to go over some quick specs on the bike, it's a 449cc single that is water cooled. It puts out just about 50 horsepower, which is just enough to kind of get on the highway, but pretty manageable still on the trail. The bike can hold about 32 liters of fuel, and your sticker price in Canada is about $12,500 plus fees. So I picked up the bike spring 2025. When I left the dealer, I actually was questioning what I had just done. The throttle was so snatchy, the bike stalled pretty easily. It was actually really hard to ride. I started thinking rally riders are really talented riders because I could not get the bike out of the parking lot without getting jerked around. Leaving a stoplight, it was just like so difficult. And yeah, I wasn't sure if I was even going to be able to keep and ride this bike. Luckily, after about 2,000 kilometers, it really smoothed out. And that's a big thing I tell everyone that's either just bought one of these bikes or they're going out on a test ride on a brand new one. You cannot judge this bike if it has less than 2,000 kilometers on it. The engines are just so tight from the factory and the gearbox is really tight. Just don't judge this bike until it breaks in. Speaking of break in, the first oil change you do at about 500 kilometers. I did have quite a bit of metal debris in that first oil change. I wouldn't say it was an alarming amount, but there is definitely some. In my second oil change at 1,000 kilometers, there's a little bit less metal debris, and my 2 oil changes after that, I've had no debris. So pretty good sign there. The engine still seems to be functioning and running correctly after the 10,000 kilometers. So I'm not concerned about that. I think it's pretty normal to have kind of small amounts of metal flakes in those first oil changes or 2. The bike does require a bit more maintenance than your big twin motorbike. It holds about 1.8 liters of motor oil, and it's recommended to do that every 5,000 K. Now, if you're riding hard, you may want to do that a bit more. They also recommend valves being checked every 5,000 K. I just did mine for the first time at 10,000 here this winter. The exhaust valves were a little bit on the tight side, not really far out, but far enough that it's worth changing the bucket to adjust that valve clearance. I could tell over the last 1,000 or 2,000 K that the bike did seem to be putting out a little bit less power, and I'm thinking that is because of that exhaust valve being a little bit tight. Other than that, the maintenance on this bike is pretty standard. One thing that catches quite a few people off guard is that you do need to remove the tailpipe to change the oil. Maybe a little bit daunting your first time, but once you do it, you realize it's just a few bolts. It slides right off, pretty straightforward. A lot of the time you work on the bike too, you'll be taking the front fender and the front 2 fuel tanks off. Again, a little bit daunting your first time, but now that I've done it a few times, I feel like I can get that whole bike stripped down in under 15 minutes. Quite easy to do, and yeah, pretty straightforward. It is nice, you don't have to change tools too much. Kove really thought this through for being able to work on the bike quickly. You're not searching around for different size bits. It's all pretty standard, pretty easy to do. For my first 2,000 kilometers, I didn't really make any modifications to the bike. I kept it pretty stock. I added Barkbuster handguards just to protect the levers, which I think is a pretty standard mod for a lot of folks. Also changed out the mirrors to double take mirrors, just so I don't have that drop and break a mirror experience. The double takes fold in when you're off-road, makes it super clean and easy, and you don't have to worry about breaking a mirror. The first big modification I made to the bike was changing the airbox. These come with a street legal airbox that have a paper filter. It's quite a small little breather, so I put in the off-road airbox with the big foam filter, and the bike totally changed immediately. You can just tell the bike's running better, it's happy to get that extra air and breathe. It'd be a mod I would recommend anybody that's getting this bike is to change that airbox. It does smooth out how the bike runs, and it does give you a little boost of power as well, which is quite nice. The next mod I did was add a bit more protection. I opted for the Outback Motortek skid plate, which replaces the stock carbon fiber one with a metal one. It also increases the area coverage, protecting a bit more of those fuel tanks, which do sit low and are pretty vulnerable. On top of that, I also added a luggage rack by Outback, as well as a front accessory rack just to hold some tools and odds and ends up front. With that fuel tank on the back and your luggage on the back, the bike does become quite rear biased, so it's nice to get some of that weight moved forward. Other than that, my mods are pretty simple. I did have the ECU reflashed. Recently added the HammerLED turn signals. These are just a little bit smaller than the stock ones. They are spring mounted, so I can't break them off, which is quite nice. Some things I would like to do to the bike is to change the exhaust to get a little bit lighter system and potentially a decat. With a decat, I could run a higher tune on the ECU and get just a little bit more power, which would be nice. Other than that, I don't think I'd really change the bike. I think Kove has come as close as possible to building the near perfect lightweight adventure bike. A lot of people have asked me about my luggage setup on the Kove, as the bike was originally made as a rally bike, not as an adventure bike. It has no rear subframe. The fuel tank, which is plastic on the rear, is actually the subframe. And a lot of people are worried about how much weight this can actually hold. I've been running the Mosko R80 on the rear. It's been totally fine. I've had it fully loaded both sides with all my camping gear and luggage, and the top bag with all my camera gear, and there's been no issue. I probably have ridden half my miles with luggage, so about 5,000 fully kitted out, and it's been totally fine. That R80 sits on the Outback Motortek tailplate with the rackless supports that go down the side, and I ended up adding the knoblin to the tailplate, which makes it really easy to put the luggage on and off. Just matter of sliding it on and tightening up the knoblin. And then my front leg straps, I just run around the frame mount, just in behind my legs. I know some people have taken the bolts out on that rear fuel tank and put in little hooks. My concern was when I'm sliding back on the bike, when I need to get my weight back, was getting caught up on those hooks, so I didn't want to do that. But around the frame rails works totally fine. I've done nothing with the suspension except for just make some simple adjustments with the clickers, and I actually find it really nice. It is on the stiff side, but when you're out riding hard and you hit a tank trap or you hit a bump, it is nice having that compliant stiff suspension that sucks it all up, especially once you get some luggage and weight on the bike. Now let's talk what I actually love about this bike. It is an adventure bike you can take anywhere. With the 32-liter fuel tanks, you never get fuel anxiety, which is super nice. I figure you can get easily 500 kilometers out of a full tank, and you might even be able to push it to 6 if you're easy on the throttle. When I ride this bike, I feel like there's almost nowhere I can't go, which is a really refreshing feeling from riding big twin adventure bikes. When you're looking at a steep hill or a big obstacle and you're just like, I'm not sure, or get a little hesitant about maybe damaging the bike. The Kove, you're just willing to give it a go. It wants to get through everything, which is really nice. The bike's quite easy to pick up since it's just so light and that fuel is so low. When I first got the bike, I thought I'd just run fuel in the front two tanks most of the time and only fill the rear when I absolutely knew I was gonna need that range. One of my first rides where I did fully fill the bike just to see what it was like was coming from the back roads in Port Alberni to Port Renfrew. And I got it filled, I got out on the back roads and I was like, you know what, the bike doesn't ride that much different fully fueled up. So I've started filling it more and more. When you do get into really tough technical terrain, you do notice that extra weight in fuel, but on gravel roads, on logging roads, it rides quite nicely full. The bike does seem to be pretty durable, be able to take hits without too much damage. Haven't bent the foot pegs, broken levers, broken foot controls, everything's been pretty well protected. I think the fuel tanks kind of sticking out really help. And of course with the luggage on, the bike doesn't tip over the same way, but I have had some crashes with no luggage and everything still stays really well protected. I do find the bike has just enough power to be on the highway. I've done a few trips where I've been riding with friends that are on T7s and I do lose them on some of the steep uphills, but for the most part, I'm there with them. That top speed on the highway is not a huge deal, plus you're still above the speed limit. Regardless, it can hold up. Moving on from that, let's talk about some of the issues I've had with the bikes. All bikes have issues. It doesn't seem to matter what you get, you are eventually going to run into some sort of problem, whether it be big or little. On the Kove, the first issue I ran into was a dead battery. I was out riding and all of a sudden I just could not start my bike. And checked the battery, it was totally flat and I couldn't figure out why. It was a relatively new battery, but sometimes that does happen. I ended up jump starting the bike and getting it back to the cabin we were staying at. Upon further inspection, it seemed like the electrical system had some sort of failure. It was not charging the battery. My first thought was that maybe it was the rectifier. So we dug into that. I actually swapped rectifiers with another Kove and that was not the issue. So I ended up getting the bike home and opening up the case and checking the stator, and that was the first part that failed. Kove ended up covering this under warranty. There was no issue. They sent a brand new one, got it in, working fine. After my next trip, I got home, put the bike away for a couple days, and then decided to go out for a ride, and I could not get the bike to start. Rather, I jump started it, push started it, there was nothing. Still had lots of juice in the battery, but the bike just would not start no matter what. I ended up doing some digging and came across the starter clutch bearing issue, which also seems to be an issue with the Honda Sierra 450, which the Kove shares an engine block with. Turns out that this clutch bearing fails and it allows the starter to spin while you're riding. So that actually ended up backfeeding the whole electrical system, killing the starter, killing the rag rect, and also likely what killed my old stator. And again, this was covered by Kove under warranty. There was no problem. They ended up throwing in a new one and I was good to go, and no more issues since with that. They say they've upgraded the bearing, so that should help. All the new bikes apparently come with this upgraded bearing, and any of the riders I've talked to that have had this issue haven't had it again since replacing it with this upgraded bearing. Kove Canada has been amazing to work with in terms of warranty. Every single time there's been an issue, they've had the parts shipped out right away. The parts have either been in stock in their warehouse in Alberta or they've brought them up express from the US. I was never more than a week without my bike, which is great. That's way more than I can say about my Norden 901 that sometimes left me stranded for 6 months waiting on parts from KTM and Husqvarna. So I'm quite happy with the warranty service. The only other little things I had is I did burn my first clutch out at about 10,000 kilometers. I'm not super surprised, although it's the quickest I ever burnt a clutch out. I think just with that tall rally gearing, sometimes you slip the clutch on hill climbs and technical sections quite a bit, which is one of the reasons I also want to go to a 51 tooth rear sprocket, just to get a little bit more torque and ease the pressure up on the clutch on those sections. I did put an aftermarket clutch in, so I'm hoping that lasts quite a bit longer, but 10,000 kilometers on the clutch, and that's what it was. The really nice part about changing the clutch plates on a Kove is it has its own clutch plate cover. So you can just remove it. You don't have to drain the coolant system or take the full cover off. It's just 6 bolts and you have access to the full clutch. I did it with the bike, tilt it down on its side just so I wouldn't lose any oil. The only other thing for mechanical is my exhaust valves were a little bit tight when I checked at 10,000 kilometers. Overall, I'm really happy with the Kove 450 Rally. I would do it again if I had another opportunity, just because of the places this bike took me. And I think that's what makes this so special as an adventure bike. You're really able to go anywhere and do anything, which is really unique compared to some of the heavier bikes. I've just felt confident in every situation that I was in with the bike that I could get through it. And I definitely took it to places where I would not have taken a bigger bike like my T7 or similar big twin. The bike just gives you confidence. Now, if you have to do a lot of road riding and highway riding to get to the trails, it may not be the best bike for you. But for where I live here on Vancouver Island, where we can ride logging road, dirt track, and secondary roads almost anywhere, it is the perfect bike. And like I said, I have done sections on the highway. I rode up the Coquihalla with it, and it can do it. It's not the funnest bike to ride big highways on, but I also don't enjoy riding big highways. And it just really makes you look at the map and try to find a secondary route through as many different sections as you can, just to get off the beaten path, which is the whole point of adventure riding. And that's where the Kove just excels. It doesn't limit you by how tough the terrain is. It makes you search that out. Whereas I find quite often on the big bike, I'm looking at a section and going, oh, I don't know if I want to ride this, and I turn around. And to me, that's what really makes this bike such a dream, is you're just willing to push deeper into the backcountry because you have the fuel range. You're willing to push deeper because the bike has the ability. You're not worried about having one of those days where you drop it 5, 6, 7, 8 times. It doesn't wear you out. You just want to keep riding this bike. A lot of people do have concerns about this bike being made in China and kind of reflecting Chinese manufacturing quality. I would say this is a no issue. When you're working on this bike, there's not aspects that jump out like, oh, this is just made so cheap, or why did they take this shortcut? I think Kove is really, really trying hard to build the best product they can. And you're seeing that, especially with this bike being built for Dakar in several aspects. It's overbuilt because it's got to withstand the Dakar race and rally. And that gives me a lot of confidence, and you see it in the build quality and the decisions that are made on this bike. I love how easy it is to work on. Like I said, that front fairing and tanks you can have off in minutes. Everything is quite accessible, quite easy to get to. You can get to the air filter, you can get to the battery just by under the seat, whereas I know there's some dual sports, like just to get to the battery, you're taking off panels, multiple panels to reach it. Some bikes, to get to the air filter, it's like you're taking fuel tanks off. This is all just right there, super simple. Everything is made to be worked on fast. In case you break down the rally, you can get that bike torn apart, figure out what's going on, and hopefully get it back together and running. And I'm really curious to see if we're gonna see other manufacturers jump into the rally bike game, just because of how good of adventure bikes they make. There's really not much else that's comparable. A lot of people talk about the CF Moto Ibex 450, but again, that's more of an adventure bike than a rally bike. And there's not a whole lot else in that 450 category. BMW does have the GS 450 coming, which is quite a bit heavier than the Kove. There's the KLE 500 that Suzuki's releasing that is actually closer to a 450, even though they call it a 500. But again, smaller fuel range, higher center of gravity with that big tank. So I'm not sure any of these other 450 bikes are quite comparable. The Kove really, at times, feels like it's more of a dual sport than an adventure bike, but again, with those big fuel tanks that just make it the perfect adventure bike. Thank you so much for watching my review on the Kove 450 Rally. If you have any questions, just leave it in the comments below and I will do my best to get back to you as soon as possible. While you're down there, please like and subscribe as it helps this channel.